I'm Bianca, 28, and I just walked out of my family's New Year's Eve party after my father announced I'd be paying my sister's $2,000 rent. My mother's threat still echoes in my ears. If you refuse, consider yourself cut from this family. So I grabbed my purse and said exactly 4 words. Then I'm officially out. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt taken for granted by your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up and explain how we got to this point, because trust me, it wasn't overnight. I've always been the dependable daughter in the Peterson family. While my younger sister Madison lived it up at college, I was the one working 2 jobs to put myself through community college and then state university. No glamorous sorority life for me, just night shifts at the diner and weekend inventory at the hardware store. My parents, Robert and Linda Peterson, raised us in a modest 3-bedroom ranch in Cedar Grove, Ohio. Dad worked at the Ford plant for 30 years until they offered early retirement packages. Mom stayed home after Madison was born, claiming she needed to focus on the baby's development. Funny how that intense focus never seemed to extend to my development when I was the baby. From age 16, I'd been contributing to household expenses for over a decade. Not because we were desperately poor, mind you, but because it builds character, according to Dad. Madison, on the other hand, got an allowance for keeping her room clean. The double standard was so obvious it hurt, but I told myself family loyalty meant sucking it up. Every month, I'd hand over money for car insurance, groceries, utilities, whatever they needed. When Mom needed dental work, guess who covered the copay? When Dad's truck needed new tires, guess whose savings account took the hit? But when Madison wanted to study abroad for a semester in Italy, somehow they found $8,000 without asking me to contribute a dime. Madison needs exposure to different cultures, Mom would say whenever I questioned their spending priorities. You're so practical, Bianca. You'll figure out your own way. Translation: Madison gets opportunities, you get responsibilities. The pattern became so normal I almost stopped noticing. Almost. Until last Christmas when I saw the credit card statement sitting open on the kitchen counter. $3,000 at Nordstrom, another $1,500 at some boutique in Columbus. All in the same week, Madison came home complaining about having nothing to wear for sorority formal. I remember standing in that kitchen, holding that statement, feeling like I was reading evidence of my own stupidity. While I was wearing the same 3 work blazers I'd owned for 4 years and driving a car with 180,000 miles, my parents were funding Madison's designer wardrobe without batting an eye. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, the same room I'd never been allowed to redecorate because it's perfectly functional, I started questioning everything. The floral wallpaper from 1995 stared back at me, a reminder that even my personal space wasn't considered worth investing in. Madison had redecorated her room 3 times during high school alone. Why was I the only one expected to sacrifice? Why did my achievements get a pat on the head while Madison's mediocre grades earned celebration dinners? Why was my financial contribution treated as obligation while Madison's expenses were treated as family investment? I thought about my coworkers at the insurance office, how they talked about their families. Sarah's parents had helped her with a down payment on her house. Mike's family had pooled money to send him to a professional development conference. When was the last time my family had invested in my future instead of expecting me to invest in theirs? The answer was simple: never. But questioning your family dynamics and actually doing something about them are 2 completely different things. I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Looking back now, I can see that Christmas was the beginning of my awakening, but it would take almost a full year and 1 devastating New Year's Eve ultimatum before I finally found the courage to walk away. The girl who lay in that outdated bedroom, making excuses for her family's treatment, had no idea that 12 months later she'd be standing in the snow outside their house, finally free from the prison of their expectations. But first, I had to understand just how deep their manipulation really went. The breaking point started building 6 months before that disastrous New Year's Eve. It was July, and I'd just gotten promoted to assistant manager at the insurance office where I work. Decent raise, better benefits, actual respect from my colleagues. Normal workplace appreciation that felt foreign after years of family dynamics. I decided to treat myself to dinner at Romano's, this little Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, just me celebrating my own success since no one else would. I was scrolling through my phone, enjoying chicken parmesan and actually feeling good about my life, when Mom called. "Bianca, honey, we need to talk about the house payment." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "What about it?" "Your father's hours got cut again, and Madison's summer expenses are higher than we expected." Madison's summer expenses. Let me paint you a picture of Madison's expenses. While I was working 45 hours a week, she was living in a beach house in South Carolina with 3 sorority sisters, posting Instagram photos of mimosa brunches and sunset yoga sessions. But somehow her lifestyle was my financial responsibility. Her Instagram feed was like a highlight reel of everything I couldn't afford. Designer swimsuits, expensive dinners at oceanfront restaurants, weekend trips to Charleston for girls' adventures. Each post included hashtags like blessed and living my best life while I was calculating whether I could afford to replace my worn-out work shoes. "How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing I'd pay whatever they requested. That's what good daughters do, right? "Just $1,500 to catch up. We'll pay you back next month when Dad's overtime kicks in." Dad's overtime. The mythical extra income that never seemed to materialize when bills came due but always existed as future possibility when they needed my money. I'd been hearing about pending overtime for 3 years, yet somehow Madison's expenses kept growing while Dad's paycheck stayed the same. I transferred the money that night, $1,500 from my savings account, the same account I was slowly building for a potential house down payment. Each transfer felt like watching my future disappear into Madison's present lifestyle. 3 months later, Dad's overtime still hadn't materialized, but Madison's fall wardrobe had. Apparently, senior year required an entirely new aesthetic. Who was I to question the sacred rituals of sorority fashion? Her closet became a museum of trends I couldn't afford, funded by money I earned while wearing the same rotation of discount store clothing. September brought Madison's 22nd birthday. I suggested a nice dinner at home, maybe a homemade cake like we'd always done for family birthdays. Simple, meaningful, budget-friendly. Instead, my parents threw her a party at the country club. 60 guests, open bar, live DJ, photographer, the works. The same country club where they'd told me my high school graduation party would be too expensive 7 years earlier. "Madison's last birthday before she graduates," Mom explained when I asked about the cost. "We want it to be special." Special. That word stung because my 22nd birthday had been dinner at Applebee's with a gift card to Target. But Madison's required a venue that probably cost more than I'd made in 3 months. The worst part? They asked me to contribute $500 toward the party expenses, because family pulls together for important events. I wrote the check without protest, smiled during the toasts, and pretended my heart wasn't breaking just a little bit more. At the party, I watched Madison blow out her candles surrounded by friends who probably didn't know I existed. Dad made a speech about his baby girl and how proud he was of her accomplishments. Mom cried actual tears of joy. Meanwhile, I sat at a table with distant relatives who kept asking what my plans were, as if my steady job and responsible lifestyle weren't plan enough. The photographer captured every moment of Madison's joy, every proud expression on my parents' faces, every detail of the elaborate celebration. When I asked if I could get copies of the photos, I was told they'd cost extra, and maybe I could find someone else's pictures on social media. That night, driving home alone while Madison headed to the after-party, I finally admitted something I'd been avoiding for years. My family saw me as an ATM with legs, reliable, convenient, always there when needed, but never the main event. The realization should have empowered me to set boundaries. Should have. But 28 years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. I kept paying, kept sacrificing, kept telling myself this was temporary. Madison would graduate, get a job, and start supporting herself. I started keeping a notebook, tracking every dollar I gave to my parents and every luxury Madison received. The numbers were staggering. In 1 year alone, I'd contributed over $8,000 to household expenses, while Madison received gifts and experiences worth easily twice that amount, $8,000. Enough for a decent used car, a semester of graduate school, or a solid emergency fund. Instead, it had vanished into the Peterson family budget, subsidizing a lifestyle I wasn't allowed to enjoy. Surely my parents wouldn't expect me to bankroll her forever. I was about to discover just how wrong that assumption was. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your own family? Let me know in the comments how you handled it. October brought the rude awakening I should have seen coming. I was at Mom's house helping her reorganize the basement when I found the paperwork that changed everything. Not intentionally snooping, just moving boxes, and there it was, sitting right on Dad's workbench like it meant nothing. A receipt for a brand new Honda Civic. Purchase date, Madison's birthday. Purchase price, $24,000. Purchased by Robert and Linda Peterson. My hands actually shook holding that paper. $24,000. While I was contributing to household expenses and Madison's party costs, they'd bought her a car worth more than I'd make in 8 months. A car I knew nothing about. The receipt was pristine, obviously kept for warranty purposes, but seeing it felt like discovering evidence of my own irrelevance. While I'd been driving my 2015 Corolla with its suspicious transmission noise and cracked windshield, they'd quietly purchased Madison a brand new vehicle. "Mom!" I called upstairs, trying to keep my voice steady. Can you come down here? She appeared at the top of the basement stairs, flour on her apron from making Madison's favorite cookies for her upcoming visit. What is it, honey? I held up the receipt. When were you planning to mention Madison's new car? Mom's face went through several expressions. Surprise, guilt, then that familiar defensive look she got when caught being unfair. Oh, that. We wanted it to be an early graduation gift surprise. Her graduation gift. I repeated the words slowly, processing. An early celebration since graduation is still 6 months away. She needed reliable transportation for her internship applications. Madison's internship applications. Let me tell you about those essential internship applications. She'd applied to exactly 3 positions, all of them unpaid, all of them in cities with expensive housing markets where she'd need additional financial support. But somehow, reliable transportation was the priority. Not, say, helping me replace the transmission in my 2015 Corolla that had been making concerning noises for months. The internships themselves were typical Madison, glamorous titles with minimal responsibility. Social media coordinator for a boutique marketing firm, event planning assistant for a luxury wedding company, brand ambassador for a startup that sold overpriced smoothie bowls. Nothing that would actually build practical skills or lead to sustainable employment. Mom, I've been driving the same car since college. It has 180,000 miles and needs at least $3,000 in repairs. Your car still runs, doesn't it? Madison's situation is different. She's at a crucial point in her career development. Madison was a communications major with a 2.8 GPA who changed her career goals 17 times. Last semester, she wanted to be an event planner. The semester before that, a social media influencer. Currently, she was exploring opportunities in marketing, which seemed to involve a lot of coffee shop meetings that looked suspiciously like social gatherings. But apparently her nebulous career exploration justified a brand new Honda, while my actual career in insurance, complete with steady income and advancement opportunities, deserved a pat on the head and reminders about fiscal responsibility. How did you afford it? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Mom fidgeted with her apron strings. Your father took out a small loan. We'll manage the payments. A loan. They'd taken on debt to buy Madison a car while asking me to cover their monthly expenses. The logic was so twisted I couldn't immediately process it. Why take on car payments when you can't afford your current bills? Unless, of course, you have a reliable daughter who'll cover the difference. Does Madison know you bought this? We're surprising her at Christmas. Isn't that wonderful? Wonderful. That's one way to describe it. Another way would be financially irresponsible manipulation designed to make Madison the hero of her own story, while casting me as the invisible support system. I started doing mental calculations. Car payment, insurance increase, maintenance costs, probably another $400 monthly added to their expenses. Money they didn't have. Money they'd expect me to help cover while Madison drove around in her shiny new graduation gift, completely unaware of the financial sacrifice it represented for anyone else. The basement felt smaller suddenly, cramped with boxes of Christmas decorations and old furniture that no one wanted, but everyone was too sentimental to discard. Just like my role in this family, unwanted but considered too essential to eliminate. I folded the receipt carefully and handed it back to Mom. I need to get going. Tell Dad I'll finish the basement another time. Bianca, you're not upset about this, are you? It's not like we're playing favorites. Not playing favorites. The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. Madison's new car, expensive birthday party, subsidized lifestyle, and pending graduation celebration versus my discount store clothing, ignored achievements, and constant financial obligations. Of course not, Mom. Why would I be upset? Driving home, I did the math. Car payment, insurance increase, maintenance costs, probably another $400 monthly added to their expenses. Money they didn't have. Money they'd expect me to help cover while Madison drove around in her shiny new graduation gift, completely unaware of the financial sacrifice it represented. The worst part wasn't even the money, though that stung. It was the secrecy. The casual assumption that I'd continue covering their bills while they made extravagant purchases for my sister. Like I was too stupid to notice or too compliant to object. I was beginning to realize they might be right about the compliant part. That night, I started a new document on my computer. Peterson Family Financial Contributions. I listed every dollar I'd given them over the past 3 years, every bill I'd covered, every emergency I'd funded. The total was staggering. Over $25,000. $25,000 that could have been my house down payment, my emergency fund, my graduate school tuition. Instead, it had disappeared into the Peterson family budget while Madison accumulated gifts and experiences I'd never been offered. That was about to change. November arrived with Madison's graduation announcement and my growing sense of unease about the family dynamics. She'd finally finished her communications degree, only took 5.5 years, and Mom was already planning celebration activities that would make her birthday party look modest. I was at my desk, actually having a productive day at work, when Madison called. Unusual, since she typically communicated through Mom or brief text messages about family events. "Bianca, guess what?" Her voice had that breathless excitement she got whenever good things happened to her. "Congratulations on finishing," I said, genuinely meaning it despite everything. "I know the last semester was challenging. Thanks, but that's not even the best part. I got offered a position at Sterling Communications in Columbus, entry-level marketing coordinator. It's perfect. The starting salary is around $35,000, which should be enough once I get established." Sterling Communications was one of those trendy agencies that specialized in social media campaigns for local businesses. Decent starting point for someone with Madison's major, though I suspected the entry-level salary wouldn't cover much in Columbus. I'd actually heard of Sterling Communications. They'd pitched our insurance office on a social media package the previous year. Their presentation was polished but overpriced, targeting companies who valued appearance over substance. Exactly the kind of place Madison would thrive, selling image instead of expertise. "That's great news. When do you start?" "January 2nd, which gives me time to find an apartment and get settled. I've already been looking at places near the Short North District. You know, where all the young professionals live. The Short North District, also known as one of the most expensive rental markets in Columbus. I'd looked at apartments there myself a few years back before realizing my budget was more suited to the suburbs. Young professionals. Madison's way of describing people who could afford overpriced lattes and boutique fitness classes. The same demographic she'd studied in college through her communications courses about lifestyle marketing and consumer psychology. "Have you found anything you like?" "Actually, yes. This cute one-bedroom loft with exposed brick and huge windows. The rent's a little steep, but Mom and Dad said they'd help until I get established." Of course they did. Mom and Dad, who'd been asking me for monthly financial contributions, had already committed to helping Madison with expensive Columbus rent. The same parents who'd claimed they were financially stretched had apparently found room in the budget for their youngest daughter's metropolitan lifestyle dreams. The loft Madison was describing sounded exactly like the Instagram-worthy spaces she'd been pinning on Pinterest for months. Exposed brick, industrial fixtures, floor-to-ceiling windows, all the trendy features that added hundreds to monthly rent but looked amazing in social media posts. "How steep is steep?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. $2,000 a month, but it includes utilities and it's walking distance to work. Plus the building has a fitness center and rooftop deck. $2,000. My mortgage payment was $1,200, and I'd considered that a stretch when I bought my place. Madison's first apartment would cost more than most people's entire monthly budget, but somehow this seemed reasonable to my parent. The building amenities Madison mentioned were the kind of luxuries I'd never considered essential. A fitness center I'd never afford to join separately. A rooftop deck for entertaining friends I rarely had time to see because I was always working or contributing to family expenses. "Sounds like V got everything figured out." "Well, mostly. Mom and Dad can help for a few months, but Dad's still dealing with reduced hours. They mentioned you might be able to contribute something too, just until I get my first few raises." There it was. The expectation delivered as casually as discussing the weather. Madison hadn't asked if I could help, or whether I was in a position to assist. She'd simply been told I would contribute to her living expenses, and she was calling to coordinate the details. "Madison, I'm already helping with household expenses here." "I know, and we all appreciate that, but this is temporary. Just until I get established in my career. Just until." Those words had preceded every financial request I'd received for the past 3 years. Just until Dad's overtime kicked in. Just until the insurance claim was processed. Just until Madison finished school. The temporary assistance had become permanent obligation, and now it was expanding to cover my sister's independent living expenses. Sterling Communications probably paid around $35,000 annually for entry-level positions before taxes. After deductions, Madison would take home maybe $2,400 monthly. If I covered her rent, she'd have that entire amount for food, transportation, entertainment, shopping, and savings. Meanwhile, I'd be subsidizing her lifestyle while struggling to maintain my own. "Let me think about it," I said, knowing I was stalling. "Of course, no pressure. I just wanted to give you a heads up so you could plan your budget." Plan my budget. Around her lifestyle choices. The assumption that my financial planning should revolve around Madison's expenses was so ingrained in family thinking that she stated it matter-of-factly. After the call ended, I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen without seeing it. The pattern was so clear now I couldn't ignore it anymore. Every time Madison reached a milestone that should have meant increased independence, My family found new ways to make her my financial responsibility. Her college education had been funded by my parents' sacrifices and my contributions. Her social activities were subsidized by my monthly payments to the household. Her transportation was covered by the car my parents had taken out loans to purchase. And now her first apartment would be partially funded by my continued support. At what point would Madison actually support herself? At what point would my parents stop asking me to subsidize their financial gifts to my sister? At what point would I stop being the family ATM and start being treated like an equal daughter? I started calculating what helping Madison would actually cost me. $2,000 monthly for rent, plus she'd probably need assistance with deposits, utilities setup, furniture, and moving expenses. Easily $20,500 monthly for the first few months, then the ongoing rent contribution indefinitely. $20,500 monthly, almost my entire take-home pay after taxes. I'd be working full-time to fund Madison's Columbus lifestyle while living on credit cards and hope. Those questions were about to be answered at New Year's Eve. I just didn't know it yet. December flew by with Madison's graduation celebration consuming all family attention. The ceremony itself was nice. I genuinely felt proud watching her walk across the stage. Whatever issues I had with the family dynamics, my sister had accomplished something worthwhile. The aftermath, however, was exactly what I'd expected. Dinner at the fanciest restaurant in town, a party at the house with extended family, and gift presentations that made Christmas morning look understated. Madison received jewelry, electronics, clothes, and of course, the grand finale reveal of her new Honda Civic. I watched her face light up when Dad handed her the keys. Pure joy, genuine surprise, the kind of moment that should have warmed my heart. Instead, I felt hollow. Not because I didn't want Madison to have nice things, but because I finally understood my role in this family theater. I was the stagehand, essential to the production, working behind the scenes to make everything possible, but never appearing in the spotlight. Madison was the star, my parents were the directors, and I was just there to move props and pay for costumes. "Isn't this amazing?" Mom whispered to me as Madison posed for photos with her new car. "She deserves this after all her hard work." Her hard work. I bit my tongue instead of pointing out that I'd worked 2 jobs through college while Madison's biggest challenge had been choosing between sorority rush events. But family harmony mattered more than accuracy, right? The graduation party featured a slideshow of Madison's college memories, sorority formals, spring break trips, study abroad adventures in Italy, summer internships that looked more like extended vacations. Each photo represented experiences I'd never had, opportunities I'd never been offered, memories I'd helped fund but never shared. Extended family members gushed over Madison's achievements and bright future. Aunt Carol mentioned how proud they all were of Madison's academic success and career prospects. Uncle Jim talked about the importance of families supporting young people's dreams. Nobody mentioned that some dreams are more supported than others. The next week, Madison started apartment hunting in earnest. She'd drive down to Columbus in her new car, touring places that cost more than my monthly take-home pay. Each evening, she'd call with updates about granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and amenities I'd never considered necessary. "I found the perfect place," she announced during one of these calls. "It's in this converted warehouse building with original hardwood floors and the most gorgeous exposed beam ceilings. The rent's $2,100, but it has in-unit laundry and covered parking. $2,100. Her budget had somehow increased by another $100 during the search process. But when you're not paying your own bills, what's an extra $100 here and there? The apartment Madison described was exactly the kind of space featured in lifestyle magazines. Industrial chic with modern amenities, the type of place young professionals posted on Instagram to showcase their success. The same Instagram aesthetic she'd been cultivating throughout college. "When do you move in?" "January 15th. Which reminds me, Mom wanted me to ask about the timing for your contribution. She said something about setting up automatic transfers to make everything easier." Automatic transfers. They'd already discussed the mechanics of my financial support without consulting me. My bank account was apparently being incorporated into Madison's budget planning without my explicit agreement. "I haven't actually agreed to contribute yet." A pause. "Oh, Mom said you were on board. She mentioned you'd probably cover around $500 a month until I get settled." $500 a month. Added to the household expenses I was already covering, plus my own mortgage, car payment, and living costs. My parents had committed me to an additional $6,000 annually without asking whether I could afford it or wanted to provide it. But 500 wasn't the real number, and we both knew it. Madison needed first month's rent, security deposit, utility deposits, moving expenses, furniture, and household supplies. The initial costs would be at least $3,000, followed by ongoing monthly contributions that would inevitably increase as she discovered how expensive adult independence actually was. Madison, I need to discuss this with Mom and Dad directly. This isn't something that should be planned around me without including me in the conversation. Sure, of course. I just assumed, well, you know how you always help out when the family needs it? Always help out. That phrase summed up my entire relationship with my family. I was the reliable solution to everyone else's problems, the backup plan that never failed, the safety net that never needed maintenance. Christmas Day was torture. Madison opened gifts worth easily $2,000 while I watched from the couch, trying to smile and participate in family joy that felt increasingly artificial. When it was my turn, I received a sweater from Target and a gift card to Barnes & Noble. Thoughtful enough to avoid complaints, modest enough to maintain the established hierarchy. The gifts Madison received weren't just expensive. They were carefully chosen to enhance her new Columbus lifestyle. Professional wardrobe pieces, electronics for her apartment, expensive skincare products, jewelry that complemented her young professional image. Everything designed to help her succeed in her new role, while I received items that suggested my life was perfectly fine as is. Later that afternoon, while Madison napped off her celebration exhaustion, I helped Mom clean up the kitchen. The perfect opportunity for the conversation I'd been avoiding. Mom, about Madison's rent situation. Oh, good. I was hoping we could nail down the details. I thought automatic transfer would be easiest for everyone. I haven't agreed to anything yet. Mom paused in her dish drying, giving me a look of genuine confusion. Bianca, honey, this is family. Madison's just starting out. She needs support. I needed support when I was starting out too. I got student loans and 2 jobs. That was different. Madison's situation is more complex. More complex. Madison's situation was exactly the same as mine had been, except she had family members willing to subsidize her choices, while I'd been expected to fund my own independence. How is it different? The job market is more competitive now. Young people need help establishing themselves. The job market had been competitive when I graduated too, but somehow I'd been expected to navigate it alone. Now Madison deserved financial cushioning because... Why? Because she was prettier? Because she'd chosen a more creative major? Because my parents had decided she needed protection while I needed character building? I'll think about it, I said, using the same stalling tactic I'd employed with Madison. Mom's expression shifted slightly, the first hint that my compliance might not be guaranteed. Bianca, this isn't really optional. Family supports family. Family supports family, unless you're the family member doing all the supporting. The next week passed in a blur of Madison's apartment preparations, and my growing dread about the New Year's Eve confrontation I could feel approaching. Because that's what it would be. A confrontation disguised as a family discussion, where my refusal to fund my sister's lifestyle would be painted as selfishness. December 31st arrived with snow falling and my stomach in knots. Time to find out whether I had the courage to finally say no. New Year's Eve at the Peterson house was always a small affair. Just immediate family, champagne at midnight, and optimistic talk about fresh starts and new possibilities. This year felt different from the moment I walked in the door. Madison was practically glowing, excited about her new job and apartment. She'd already bought decorations for her place, planned a housewarming party, and created Pinterest boards for her future lifestyle, the life that was partially dependent on my financial contributions. The house was decorated with the same New Year's Eve supplies we'd used for years: silver streamers, gold balloons, and those cheap party hats that never stayed on properly. Everything looked festive and familiar, but underneath the celebration, I could feel the tension building toward the conversation I knew was coming. Dad opened champagne early, around 9 o'clock, citing his advancing age and need for reasonable bedtimes. We sat in the living room with our glasses, the Christmas tree still twinkling in the corner, everything looking picture-perfect for family celebration. "I want to make a toast," Dad announced, standing with his champagne flute raised. "To new beginnings, new opportunities, and family supporting family through life's transitions." We raised our glasses dutifully. Mom beamed at Madison, who was practically bouncing with excitement about her upcoming independence. I took a sip of champagne and waited for the real conversation to begin. "Speaking of transitions," Dad continued, his tone shifting to business mode, "we need to discuss Madison's living situation in Columbus." Here it came, the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating for weeks. The family meeting disguised as a toast, the financial planning presented as inevitable rather than optional. "Bianca, starting February 1st, you'll need to contribute $2,000 monthly toward Madison's rent. She's overwhelmed with starting a new job and deserves family support during this challenging time." $2,000. Not the $500 Madison had mentioned, not partial assistance, the entire rent payment. My parents expected me to pay for my sister's apartment while she kept her full salary for personal expenses. The number hit me like a physical blow. $2,000 was more than half my monthly take-home pay. Added to the household expenses I was already covering for my parents, it would leave me with barely enough to cover my own mortgage and basic living costs. I looked at Madison, expecting surprise or protest at this inflated amount. Instead, I saw a satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She'd known. This had been planned, discussed, agreed upon without my input. Again, the smile told me everything. Madison wasn't just passively accepting help. She'd actively participated in planning how much of my income would be redirected to fund her lifestyle. The sister I'd been supporting through college had been plotting with our parents to expand my financial obligations. "That's her entire rent," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm despite the storm building inside me. "Madison needs time to establish herself professionally," Mom added, her tone suggesting this was obvious. $2,000 isn't that much for someone with your salary. $2,000 wasn't much. The casual dismissal of such a significant amount revealed how completely they'd lost sight of my financial reality. Or maybe they understood perfectly and simply didn't care because my sacrifice enabled Madison's comfort. I looked around the room at my family's expectant faces. Dad confident in his authority, the same expression he'd worn when assigning me chores as a child. Mom convinced of her reasoning, already planning how to explain this arrangement to extended family. Madison excited about her subsidized independence, probably already mentally decorating her Columbus loft with furniture I'd be helping to fund. None of them seemed to grasp the magnitude of what they were asking. $2,000 monthly meant I'd have no emergency fund, no savings, no financial security of my own. If my car broke down or I had a medical emergency, I'd be financially devastated while Madison enjoyed her fully funded fresh start. "If you refuse," Mom said, her voice taking on the threatening tone she used when family loyalty was questioned, "consider yourself cut from this family." The ultimatum landed like a slap. Pay for your sister's lifestyle or lose your family entirely. 28 years of being the reliable daughter, the contributing member, the one who always said yes, and this was my reward. A threat of abandonment, if I finally said no. The threat wasn't idle either. I could see it in their faces. The genuine belief that my refusal would be such a betrayal of family values that I'd deserve permanent exile. In their minds, my financial support wasn't generosity, but obligation, and my compliance wasn't appreciated but expected. I stood up slowly, setting my champagne glass on the coffee table with deliberate care. My hands were steady, my voice was steady. Everything about me was steady except my heart, which was breaking just a little bit. "Then I'm officially out." The words came out clearly, without the tremor I'd expected. After months of internal conflict and growing resentment, the decision felt surprisingly simple. They'd given me a choice: fund Madison's lifestyle or lose my family. I was choosing my financial future over their manipulation. I grabbed my purse from the hall table and walked toward the front door. Behind me, I could hear Madison starting to cry, and Mom's voice shifting into comfort mode. "Calm down, sweetie," Mom was saying. "She'll change her mind. She always does." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. She'll change her mind. She always does. That's what they thought of me. Not a person with boundaries or self-respect, but a reliable resource that might occasionally malfunction but would always return to proper functioning. The statement revealed everything. They'd made this ultimatum confident that I'd cave under pressure, apologize for my selfishness, and agree to whatever terms they set. Because that's what I'd always done before. Complained quietly, then complied completely. I opened the door and stepped into the snowy night, closing it firmly behind me. For the first time in my adult life, I'd said no to my family. The cold air hit my face as I walked to my car, snow crunching under my feet. Behind me, the warm glow of the house windows looked inviting, but I didn't turn around. Inside, my family was probably already planning how to guilt me into changing my mind. They didn't understand yet that something fundamental had shifted. The reliable daughter who'd funded their lifestyle choices for years had finally reached her breaking point. Tomorrow would bring consequences they'd never imagined possible. The real question was whether I had the strength to keep saying no when they realized I was serious. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. The next morning, I woke up with the strangest feeling, like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally exhale. No guilt, no regret, just this weird sense of lightness I hadn't felt since, well, maybe ever. I made coffee in my own kitchen, in my own house, with money I'd earned and didn't owe to anyone else. Novel concept, right? While the coffee brewed, I opened my laptop and started making a list. Time to see exactly how deep my family's financial dependence on me actually went. Electric bill for their house. In my name, auto pay from my account. Water bill, same thing. Car insurance for Dad's truck? Yep, mine too. Mom's cell phone. Bianca Peterson, reliable daughter, and apparently family utility company. Madison's credit card that she'd temporarily added to my account for emergencies. 2,847 balance that somehow never got paid down. The list kept growing as I dug through my bank statements. Madison's car insurance, added without my knowledge when she got her license. A family 8AA membership I'd forgotten about. Even a subscription to some premium cable package that none of them had mentioned but all of them enjoyed. I'd been subsidizing their entire lifestyle without realizing the extent of it. No wonder they'd been so confident about demanding Madison's rent money. I was already paying for everything else. But here's the thing about being taken for granted. Eventually, the person doing the taking starts to assume the giving will continue forever. They'd made a crucial miscalculation. I picked up my phone and started making calls. First National Bank. Hi, this is Bianca Peterson. I need to remove my name from several accounts and cancel automatic payments. The customer service representative was very helpful. Surprisingly easy to untangle years of financial entanglement when you're actually motivated to do it. Remove name from joint utility accounts? Done. Cancel automatic payments? Completed. Stop payment on Madison's credit card? Absolutely. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Miss Peterson? Actually, yes. I'd like to add a note to my account. If anyone calls claiming to be family and requesting account information or changes, please require them to come in person with proper identification. Because I knew my family. And I knew that when the bills started arriving with their names on them, they'd try to fix this the easy way first. Each phone call felt like breaking a chain. Electric company. Yes, I'd like to remove my name from the account for 1247 Maple Street and transfer full responsibility to Robert Peterson. Gas company. Same conversation. Water department. Ditto. The electric company representative was particularly helpful. Ms. Peterson, I see you've been the responsible party on this account for, wow, almost 4 years. Are you moving? Something like that. Well, the new account holder will need to put down a security deposit since they don't have established credit with us. That'll be $300. $300 they didn't have, for an account they'd assumed would always be in my name. Reality was about to get expensive for the Peterson family. By noon, I'd successfully extracted myself from their financial web. For the first time in over a decade, my bank account was truly mine. My credit was truly mine. My financial obligations were truly mine. It felt amazing. I celebrated with lunch at a nice restaurant, the kind of place I'd avoided because every extra dollar had been earmarked for family emergencies. As I sat there enjoying salmon and actually good wine, I calculated how much money I'd have each month without their expenses. Almost $1,500. $1,500 I could save, invest, or spend on myself without guilt. I could finally replace my ancient laptop, fix my car, maybe even take a vacation that didn't involve visiting family. The freedom was intoxicating. My phone stayed silent all day. No calls from Mom asking about utility payments. No texts from Dad about his truck insurance. No panicked messages from Madison about her credit card being declined. But silence in the Peterson family never lasted long. Around 6 p.m., my phone started ringing. Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad's number. Voicemail again. Madison calling from her Columbus apartment. Straight to voicemail. I ordered Thai food for dinner and settled in for the evening. Whatever crisis was building at 1247 Maple Street could wait until tomorrow. For the first time in years, their emergency wasn't my emergency. The first voicemail was Mom, trying to sound casual. Hi, honey. Just wondering if you've had any issues with your bank account today. Call me back when you get this. The second was Dad, less casual. Bianca, we need to talk about some account problems. Call me tonight. The third was Madison, panicked. Bianca, something's wrong with my credit card and Mom said you might know what happened. Please call me back ASAP. What do you think will happen next? Will Bianca's family realize how much they depended on her? Or will they find another way to manipulate the situation? Drop your predictions in the comments below. The voicemails started piling up around 8 p.m. I didn't listen to them, but I could see the timestamps, every 20 minutes like clockwork. Desperation had a very predictable rhythm. I went to bed that night with my phone on silent for the first time in years. No family emergencies could reach me. No financial crises required my immediate attention. For the first time since I'd turned 18, I slept through the night without worrying about money I didn't have going to bills that weren't mine. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. I was halfway through my morning coffee when the phone started ringing at 7 a.m. sharp. Mom's number. Again. I'd counted 17 missed calls since yesterday evening, but who's keeping track? On ring 18, I finally answered. Good morning, Mom. Bianca, thank God. We've been trying to reach you all night. There's been some kind of mistake with the utilities. Some kind of mistake. I almost laughed. What kind of mistake? The electric company called yesterday saying our account was being transferred back to us, but we never requested that. And then the gas company called with the same story. Your father thinks there might be identity theft involved. Identity theft. Creative, but not quite accurate. More like identity liberation. That's strange, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Did you call the companies to sort it out? Of course we did, but they're saying you requested the transfers, which makes no sense, because why would you do that? The genuine confusion in her voice was almost endearing. After over a decade of taking my financial support for granted, the possibility that I might voluntarily remove myself from their accounts literally hadn't occurred to them. Maybe you should ask them what documentation they need to set up the accounts in your name. Bianca, we can't afford all these bills right now. You know your father's situation with work, and Madison just started her job. This couldn't come at a worse time. This couldn't come at a worse time. As if there would ever be a good time for them to pay their own expenses. There would always be some crisis, some transition, some reason why I needed to keep covering their bills. I'm sure you'll figure it out. What do you mean you're sure we'll figure it out? These are our utilities. We need electricity and heat. Then I guess you'll need to pay for electricity and heat. Silence. Long, stunned silence. Bianca, what's gotten into you? This isn't like you at all. This isn't like me. The woman who'd been paying their bills for years, who'd contributed to every family crisis, who'd never said no to any financial request. This sudden boundary setting was completely out of character. She was right. It wasn't like me. The old me would have already apologized and offered to call the utility companies to fix everything. The old me would have felt guilty for causing them stress. But the old me had been broke and exhausted and taken for granted. Mom, I need to get ready for work. You should call the utility companies and arrange payment plans. Bianca Peterson, don't you dare hang up this phone. I hung up. 2 minutes later, Dad called. I let it ring. Madison called from her Columbus apartment. Voicemail. Mom called back. Voicemail. Around 10 a.m., while I was actually getting some productive work done at the office, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Miss Peterson, this is Janet from First National Bank. We've had several people call this morning claiming to be family members, requesting information about your account. Per your instructions, we've declined to provide any information and advised them to contact you directly. Thank you, Janet. That's exactly what I wanted. However, I wanted to let you know that your parents, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Peterson, are here at the bank now requesting to speak with a manager about joint accounts. They seem quite upset. Of course they were at the bank. When phone calls failed, the Peterson family always escalated to in-person confrontation. Maximum drama potential. The accounts they're asking about were closed or transferred yesterday, correct? Yes, ma'am. Everything was handled according to your instructions. Then there's nothing for them to discuss with the manager. But I appreciate you calling. I hung up and immediately called my landlord. Mr. Davis? This is Bianca Peterson. I wanted to give you a heads up that some family members might contact you claiming there's an emergency with my lease or rental payments. Please don't provide them with any information and don't accept any payments from anyone other than me directly. Is everything all right, Bianca? Everything's fine. Just some family boundary issues I'm working through. After lunch, the call started again, this time with a different tone. Mom's voice on the voicemail was strained. Bianca, the bank won't talk to us. The insurance company won't talk to us. We can't figure out what's happening with the accounts. Please call us back so we can sort this out together. Together. As if this were a problem we needed to solve as a team, rather than a boundary I'd established to protect myself. But I could hear something new in her voice. For the first time, Mom sounded genuinely worried rather than just annoyed. Like maybe this wasn't going to be as easy to fix as she'd assumed. Good. It was about time they understood that my financial support wasn't automatically renewable. The consequences were just getting started. Wednesday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Unknown number again, but this time it was Dad's work voice. The formal tone he used when he needed to sound authoritative. Bianca, it's your father. We need to talk immediately. Good morning to you too, Dad. Don't get smart with me. Do you have any idea what you've done? What I'd done. Like removing my name from accounts I'd never agreed to be responsible for was some kind of criminal act instead of basic financial boundaries. I've taken my name off accounts that weren't mine to begin with. Those accounts kept this family functioning. The electric bill is due today, and we don't have the money to cover it. Your mother spent half of yesterday crying because she doesn't understand how to set up online bill pay. Mom doesn't understand online bill pay. The same woman who'd managed to coordinate Madison's entire college experience, plan elaborate celebrations, and research luxury apartment amenities somehow couldn't figure out how to pay her own bills. Funny how quickly learned helplessness disappeared when there wasn't another option. YouTube has great tutorials for that kind of thing. This isn't a joke, Bianca. Madison's credit card was declined yesterday when she tried to buy groceries. She called me in tears. Madison's credit card was declined because Madison's credit card had a $2,847 balance and I'd stopped making payments. Simple cause and effect. Maybe she should pay her credit card bill. With what money? She just started working. With the money she earns from working. Revolutionary concept. I could hear Dad breathing heavily through the phone, the way he used to when I was 16 and had dared to question his authority. You're being incredibly selfish right now. This family has always supported each other through difficult times. This family has always supported each other. Translation. I had always supported everyone else through their difficult times while navigating my own challenges alone. Name one time anyone in this family supported me through a difficult time. Silence. I'm waiting, Dad. One example of the family supporting me the way you're expecting me to support Madison. We raised you. We fed you and clothed you and put a roof over your head. That's called basic parenting. I'm talking about actual support, financial help, emotional encouragement, celebrating my achievements, anything. More silence. I could almost hear him scrambling for examples that didn't exist. What about when you graduated college? You mean when I graduated college with honors and you didn't attend the ceremony because Madison had a sorority event the same weekend? That was different. Madison needed nothing. You chose her sorority social over my academic achievement, just like you chose her comfort over my financial stability for the past 3 years. That's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. It's been wildly unfair to me for years, and I'm done accepting it. Around noon, my phone rang with Mom's number, but Madison's voice came through instead. Bianca, it's Madison. Can we please talk? I'm really confused about what's happening. Hi, Madison. Congratulations on your first week at Sterling Communications. Thank you, but listen. There's been some kind of mix-up with my credit card. It's not working, and I can't figure out why. Some kind of mix-up? The family talent for reframing obvious cause and effect as mysterious confusion was really something. What kind of mix-up? It says the account is over the limit or something. But you always take care of the payments, so I don't understand why there would be a problem. I always take care of the payments. Madison had been using credit in my name for 2 years and genuinely didn't understand why her spending might affect the account balance. Madison, that credit card has your charges on it but my name on the account. You've spent $2,847 without making any payments. But Mom said it was like a family account for emergencies. Emergency shopping at Sephora and subscription boxes aren't really emergencies. Those weren't emergencies, but the groceries yesterday were. I needed food for my apartment. The groceries incident had clearly traumatized her. Madison had probably never experienced the humiliation of a declined card in front of other customers. Then you should use your own money to buy groceries. Bianca, I don't get paid for 2 more weeks, and I had to put down deposits for utilities and internet. I don't have grocery money right now. The same deposits my parents had expected me to cover as part of Madison's moving expenses. Now she was discovering what adult financial responsibility actually looked like. That sounds like something you need to budget for. Budget for? I'm 22. I'm just starting out. Can't you help me just this once until I get established? Just this once. Until I get established. The same phrases that had preceded every financial request for the past 3 years. No, Madison, I can't. Why are you being so mean to me? What did I do wrong? What did she do wrong? Madison genuinely didn't understand that accepting financial support from someone for years while demanding more constituted doing anything wrong. In her mind, I was the family ATM that had mysteriously stopped dispensing money. You didn't do anything wrong, Madison, but you also didn't do anything to earn my financial support. I'm your sister. Yes, you are, and I love you. But love doesn't include paying your bills. But family helps family. That's what Dad always says. Dad says that when he wants my help. When did family ever help me? Another silence. Madison was beginning to understand that this conversation wasn't following the script she'd expected. You never needed help. You always had everything figured out. I had everything figured out because I had to, because no one was going to figure it out for me. That's not true. Madison, when I graduated college, where was my celebration party? I don't remember. There wasn't one. When I got promoted to assistant manager, who acknowledged it? I'm sure Mom and Dad, they didn't. When my car needed repairs, who helped with the costs? You handled it yourself. Right. I handled everything myself while contributing to every celebration, crisis, and expense in your life. I could hear her crying softly through the phone. I never realized. I know you didn't. But now you do. And now you get to learn what it's like to handle things yourself. But I don't know how. Then you'll learn. The same way I did. The same way every other adult learns. I hung up feeling something I'd never experienced before. Peace. Clear, simple boundaries. No guilt, no obligation, no automatic yes to every request. It felt revolutionary. Later that evening, I received a text from Madison. Mom and Dad said you're jealous of my success and trying to sabotage my career. I can't believe you'd be so petty. Jealous of her success. Madison's entry-level marketing job and subsidized lifestyle constituted success worth envying, apparently. I deleted the text without responding. The Peterson family drama would continue with or without my participation. For the first time in my life, I was choosing without. Thursday morning started with a bang. Literally. Someone was pounding on my front door at 6:30 a.m. I peered through the window and saw Dad's truck in my driveway. Both parents standing on my porch looking like they'd been up all night. Mom clutching a folder of papers. Dad wearing his most serious expression. Time for the full court press. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. This is early, even for you two. We need to talk, Dad said, pushing past me into my living room. Mom followed, immediately settling onto my couch like she belonged there. Bianca, we're here because we love you and we're worried about you. We're worried about you. The classic manipulation opening. When demands didn't work, concern for my mental state was always the backup plan. I'm fine. You're the ones who look like you haven't slept. We haven't slept. Mom's voice was higher than usual, strained with genuine panic. The electric company wants $400 to reconnect service. The gas company wants $300 just to start an account in our name. We can't afford all of this at once. That does sound stressful. Stressful? Bianca, we might have to sell the house. Sell the house. The nuclear option. The Peterson family property that had been in Dad's name for 30 years, suddenly at risk because they couldn't pay their own bills for 1 week. Houses don't sell overnight, Mom. You have time to figure out your finances. Dad moved closer, using his physical presence the way he had when I was a child. Stop playing games. We all know you can afford to help us through this transition. I can afford it. That doesn't mean I should pay for it. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? The question stopped him mid-sentence. I'd asked it before, but this time I didn't wait for an answer. Madison got a new car for graduation. I got student loans. Madison got family-funded trips to Italy. I got second jobs. Madison gets credit cards and apartment deposits and family support while I get requests to fund her lifestyle. That's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. It's been wildly unfair to me for years, and I'm done accepting it. Mom opened her folder and pulled out utility bills, past due notices, and bank statements. Look at these numbers, Bianca. Look at what we're facing. I glanced at the papers. The numbers were significant but not catastrophic. They owed about $200 in back utilities, deposits, and late fees. A decent chunk of money, but hardly the financial crisis they were presenting. This is manageable if you budget properly and cut unnecessary expenses. Unnecessary expenses? Like what? Like Madison's rent. The suggestion landed like a bomb. Both parents stared at me as if I'd suggested something obscene. Madison can't move back home, Mom said finally. She has a career to establish. Then Madison can pay her own rent. She can't afford it. Then Madison can find an apartment she can afford. The logic was so simple it was painful. If you can't afford something, you don't buy it. If someone else is paying for it, you're not actually affording it. You want your sister to live in some terrible neighborhood just because you're being stubborn? Stubborn. My refusal to fund Madison's lifestyle was now reframed as stubbornness rather than reasonable boundaries. I want my sister to live within her means. Dad sat heavily in my chair, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. Bianca, we're asking for help as a family, and I'm saying no. As an individual with my own financial goals. What goals could be more important than family? Financial independence, emergency savings, retirement planning, a future that doesn't depend on subsidizing other people's choices. Mom's eyes filled with tears. When did you become so selfish? Selfish. The Peterson family favorite. Anytime I prioritized my own needs, I was being selfish. But when they prioritized Madison's wants over my financial stability, that was family support. I became selfish the day you told me to pay my sister's rent or lose my family. They left 30 minutes later with nothing resolved. No agreement to restore the utility accounts. No promise to resume Madison's credit card payments. No backing down from my position. For the first time in Peterson family history, I'd said no and stuck to it. The real test would come when they realized I wasn't bluffing. Friday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, but not one I had saved. Bianca? This is Dr. Harrison from Cedar Grove Family Practice. I have your parents here in my office, and they've listed you as their emergency contact for billing questions. My parents were at the doctor's office using me as their emergency contact for billing. The manipulation was reaching new creative heights. What kind of billing questions? Well, it appears their insurance premium payment was returned for insufficient funds, and they're concerned about coverage for your mother's prescription refills. Insufficient funds for insurance premiums. I closed my eyes and did the math. Health insurance was probably $600 monthly for both of them, another expense that had likely been automated from my account without my explicit knowledge. Dr. Harrison, I'm not responsible for my parents' medical bills or insurance payments. They'll need to handle this directly with your billing department. Oh, they seem to think you manage their healthcare expenses. They were mistaken. After I hung up, I pulled up my bank statements from the past year and started searching for any charges I might have missed. Sure enough, there it was. Peterson Family Health Plan, $647.50, automatically deducted monthly for 8 months. $647.50 times 8 months, $5,180. I'd been paying their health insurance for most of the year without realizing it. The automatic payment had been buried among my other bills, and I'd never questioned it because I trusted my family not to add expenses to my accounts without permission. That trust had been expensive. I called the insurance company and removed my payment method from their account. Their coverage would lapse at the end of the month unless they arranged alternative payment. An hour later, Mom called. Bianca, Dr. Harrison said you told him we're responsible for our own medical bills. What's happening to you? You've never been this cruel. Cruel. Expecting adults to pay their own expenses was now cruelty. Mom, I didn't know I was paying your health insurance until today. Of course you knew. We added it to your account last spring when your father's workplace changed their coverage options. You added it without asking me. We didn't think we needed to ask. You always help with family expenses. Always. That word had defined my relationship with money for years. I always helped, always paid, always said yes. So they'd stopped asking permission and started assuming consent. I'm removing my payment method from all family accounts. You'll need to take over your own expenses. Take over our own expenses? Bianca, we're your parents. Which means you should be financially independent, not dependent on your daughter. We're not dependent. We're just going through a temporary rough patch. Temporary rough patch. The same rough patch that had lasted 3 years and would somehow continue indefinitely unless I kept subsidizing it. Then you should be able to handle a temporary rough patch without my money. What about Madison? She's counting on you for rent support. Madison is counting on her own income to pay her own expenses. Like every other adult in America. She's your sister. Yes, she is. And I love her. But I don't owe her money because we share DNA. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, circling through the same arguments with increasing desperation. Family loyalty, temporary assistance, cruel selfishness. I'd heard it all before. But something had shifted in Mom's voice by the end. Less anger, more resignation. Like she was finally beginning to understand that I wasn't going to change my mind. Fine, she said finally. Be selfish. But don't come crying to us when you realize what you've thrown away. What I'd thrown away. The opportunity to work extra hours to pay my sister's rent. The privilege of subsidizing my parents' lifestyle while struggling to maintain my own. The joy of being taken for granted by people who claimed to love me. I was beginning to think I'd thrown away the right things. Saturday morning brought the call I'd been expecting, but dreading. Bianca, it's Madison. Mom said you're not helping with my rent anymore. That's correct. But I already signed the lease. I committed to this apartment based on family support. Then you committed to something you couldn't afford. What am I supposed to do now? For the first time in my life, Madison was asking me a question I couldn't and wouldn't solve for her. Figure it out, Madison. You're an adult with a job. Adults with jobs pay their own rent. But I can't afford this place on my salary alone. Then find a place you can afford. You're ruining my life. I'm returning your life to you. What you do with it is up to you. The revolution was complete. The Peterson family ATM was officially out of order. 2 weeks later, I was having breakfast when my phone rang. Mom's number, but her voice sounded different, defeated, exhausted, older. Bianca, we need to talk. Can you come over? About what? Please. Just, can you come over? I'd been expecting this call since the day I walked out on New Year's Eve. The Peterson family had finally hit rock bottom, and they needed their reliable daughter to fix everything. Again. But when I pulled into their driveway, something looked different. Madison's Honda Civic was gone. I found my parents sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork and looking like they'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Dad's shoulders were slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed but clear. The kitchen looked different too. Clean, organized, like they'd been spending time actually taking care of their own home instead of managing Madison's various crises from a distance. Where's Madison's car? Dad cleared his throat. We returned it to the dealership yesterday. Returned it? We couldn't afford the payments without your help, Mom said quietly. We realized we made a terrible mistake. made a terrible mistake. In Peterson family language, this was as close to an apology as I'd ever get. What kind of mistake? All of it. Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. The car, the apartment expectations, the way we've treated you for years, the way they'd treated me for years. This conversation was heading in a direction I hadn't expected. Madison called last night, Mom continued. She screamed at us for an hour about ruining her life and embarrassing her in front of her coworkers because her car got repossessed. Repossessed? Not repossessed. Returned. But Madison told everyone it was repossessed because it sounded more dramatic. Dad rubbed his forehead. She said you were jealous and manipulative and that we should cut you out of the family permanently. Madison had called me jealous and manipulative. The sister who'd been driving a car I'd indirectly funded while living in an apartment I'd been expected to pay for had decided I was the problem. She said we'd ruined her reputation at work, Mom added, that her colleagues would think less of her if they knew her family couldn't afford to help her maintain her lifestyle. Madison was more concerned about her colleagues' opinions than her family's financial stability. Somehow this didn't surprise me. What did you tell her? We told her she was wrong, Mom said firmly. We told her that you'd been supporting this family for years while she'd been taking advantage of our generosity and your sacrifices. Your sacrifices. Mom had finally said it out loud. My financial contributions hadn't been family support. They'd been sacrifices that enabled other people's comfort. Madison didn't like that assessment. Madison hung up on us and said she never wanted to speak to any of us again until we apologized to her and bought her another car. Dad's voice carried a mixture of sadness and resignation. She said we were failures as parents for not being able to provide for our adult daughter's needs. So what happens now? Dad leaned forward, meeting my eyes for the first time since I'd arrived. Now we ask for your forgiveness. And we ask if you'd be willing to help us figure out how to manage our finances responsibly. Help them manage their finances responsibly. Not pay their bills, but help them learn to budget and prioritize. What about Madison's rent? Madison's rent is Madison's problem, Mom said, with more steel in her voice than I'd heard in years. We called her landlord and explained that we wouldn't be contributing to her expenses anymore. She has 30 days to figure out her own solution, and if she can't afford the apartment, then she'll have to find one she can afford, or find a roommate, or move back home and follow house rules like any other adult child living with parents. House rules. The same rules I'd followed as a teenager while Madison had been given unlimited freedom. She won't be happy about that. Madison hasn't been happy about anything that required her to take responsibility for herself, Dad said. We should have seen it years ago. I stayed for 2 more hours, helping them organize their bills and create a realistic budget. It turned out they could afford their basic expenses if they eliminated Madison's costs and managed their money carefully. The car loan they'd canceled by returning Madison's Honda, the insurance premiums, utility deposits, and late fees they'd have to pay from their own savings. It would be tight for a few months, but manageable. We owe you more than an apology, Mom said as I was getting ready to leave. We owe you thousands of dollars and years of appreciation we never expressed. Why did you treat us so differently? Because you were so capable and independent. We thought you didn't need our help. And because Madison was always demanding attention and support, we thought she needed more from us. Mom's voice cracked slightly. We took your strength for granted and enabled Madison's helplessness. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Exactly. But we were wrong. We should have been supporting your dreams instead of funding Madison's demands. We should have celebrated your achievements instead of expecting them. We should have protected your generosity instead of exploiting it. For the first time in my adult life, my parents were acknowledging the reality of our family dynamics. It felt surreal. What changed your minds? The past 2 weeks, Dad admitted. Trying to manage our own bills for the first time in years. Realizing how much work you'd been doing behind the scenes. Understanding that Madison's lifestyle was completely unsustainable without your subsidies. And seeing Madison's reaction when the money stopped, Mom added. She didn't ask how we were managing or whether we needed help. She just demanded to know when the support would be restored. 3 months later, Madison found a roommate and moved to a cheaper apartment across town. She bought a used Toyota and stopped calling the family except for holidays. She never apologized for anything, but she also stopped expecting anyone else to solve her problems. When she did visit, she was polite but distant, treating family gatherings like obligatory social events rather than genuine connections. It was sad, but not surprising. Madison had never learned to value relationships that didn't provide material benefits. My parents learned to manage their own finances and started treating me like their daughter instead of their personal banker. Dad got a part-time job at the hardware store to supplement his reduced hours. Mom started cooking at home instead of ordering takeout and discovered she actually enjoyed meal planning and budgeting. They began asking about my life, my goals, my interests, topics that had been overshadowed by family financial discussions for years. For the first time, I felt like I had parents who were genuinely interested in my well-being rather than just my bank account. And me? I started saving money, planning for my own future, and learning what it felt like to be valued rather than just useful. 6 months later, I had enough saved to replace my aging car. A year later, I put a down payment on a small vacation cabin in the mountains, something I'd dreamed about for years but never thought I could afford. The Peterson family ATM was permanently closed, but the Peterson family was finally learning how to function without one. Most importantly, I learned that setting boundaries doesn't destroy relationships. It reveals which relationships were worth preserving in the first place. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about family dynamics and finding your backbone when you need it most. Sometimes the best gift you can give your family is teaching them to stand on their own 2 feet. Have you ever had to set financial boundaries with family? Share your story in the comments below.